Welcome to the First Case Expert Series. I'm your host, Melanie Perry, and today we are speaking with our perioperative instrument coordination expert, Jeff Wertz. Jeff, welcome to the Expert Series.
You nailed it with that mouthful right off the bat. You nailed it.
That's a big title.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited to be able to host this series and talk to you throughout it. You know, you have so many years of experience in the perioperative space, from your role as an orthopedic sales rep to now developing and implementing and selling technology to hospitals and ASCs throughout the country. And it's really a privilege to have you as an expert for us on First Case. But instead of me talking about you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you. So I, as you mentioned, started off in healthcare as a medical device rep. Working in orthopedic trauma for several years in Chicago, Arizona, and then really got interested with the technology side of things and software and how that can be utilized to make things more efficient, safer, more cost effective overall. Having firsthand experience of a lot of the waste that goes on in slack between the industry side to the healthcare side, and then getting involved with Surgio Health now. Where we really focus on working with ORs, with SPDs, and in better managing the processes and how we can leverage technology to make things more efficient. I'm really excited for this conversation because, I want to make clear I obviously am not an expert in your role as a peri-op manager. I don't have that background. I don't have the background of a SPD manager either, or SPD tech. But where I do have, in my opinion, is a unique perspective of having had to deal with both sides of this as a rep, first and foremost, and then also, over the last 7 years, really working with hospitals at every level with how do we address the challenges that are currently taking place. And I think that's really where, that title that we were discussing and came up with is it's long, but I think it encompasses the general, direction of what we're trying to address here, which is a lot of the breakdowns of communication and bring some solutions to the table.
I love it. Yeah, perioperative instrument coordination expert. It is a big mouthful of a title, but I think it does capture what we want to talk about in this series. Why don't we go a little deeper? You just mentioned a little bit, but can you give the audience more of an introduction to really what we're going to be looking at through the rest of this series?
Yeah. And I'm going to actually kind of try to turn this back on you a little bit because I think that's the interesting perspective that we can do here, and especially in a video format, as opposed to just me writing.
Right.
Writing this is getting your perspective as a peri-op manager and where the challenges lie in what you're doing. Because I think I've spent enough time working really specifically with sterile processing departments to provide a departmental solution from a software perspective. And often what comes up is, well, we want, the OR wants this information, or they want us to be able to do these things correctly. And there's a breakdown of communication. And where I'd be really interested is kind of get from your experience, what you've seen across many different sites, what that experience is like for you in interacting with the SPD, if you don't mind.
That's a big question. But it's actually a really good question to ask, because across the hospitals that I worked in, I have worked in several. I've been in charge of a couple of departments, and communication between our ORs and SPDs has not always been good. Sometimes there's just a breakdown in kind of understanding each of our roles, who's responsible for what, and then when decisions get made, how those decisions roll out, who's told what to do, and there's a lot of territory sometimes when it comes to SPD versus OR. And that is really, I think, where a lot of times we struggled, was just being able to realize that we were all coming to the table to ultimately achieve the same goal, and being able to communicate together so that we could find a way to work together to achieve those goals. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And I think we've kind of addressed this in some of our previous conversations around this, when we were speaking from a vendor side to the OR. And I think where I'm excited to go into with this series is more more in depth between all the different departments and the different players that are at hand. And I think a lot of what we've previously discussed is some things around, the communication and the languages. And I'm looking forward to, in this, going through a little bit more in depth on strategies that can be kind of taken up with a collaborative, team of OR and SPD, taking into account what the surgeons need, what infection and prevention is looking for, what supply chain challenges there are, and having a wider discussion of perspectives, and then try to break those things down into some more achievable goals of what can you do from a ground level without, direct executive input, knowing that this is something that I think every hospital is looking to do. What are some of these strategies that we can do to move the needle, and what kind of systems can we put in place? What's attainable today? And then how do we take that and make it into a more scalable approach, no matter what size hospital or system that you're working within? I think a lot of it breaks down into, let's have the conversation. And I think this is going to be a challenge for us as we go through this, is taking these big ideas and big challenges that are very complex today and condensing those down or filtering those down into making sure that everyone's understanding of the challenges at each spot and how we can begin to address those. So I think that it's going to be important that we are kind of mapping out the current challenges so that everyone is on the same page, and then trying to break that down into a more attainable goal to overcome those.
I think that's helpful. We're going to talk about a challenge, but also talk about an achievable goal. So it's not like we're just going to have a conversation centered around issues, challenges, and just complaining about the struggles that we see, but
right.
Actionable.
I'm not gonna. Don't hold me to that. I think we're gonna have to complain a little bit.
Yes, I think we'll definitely complain. But I mean, me, just like anybody else who is in the perioperative world, we could sit and complain about our frustrations and the things that we see forever. But if we don't look to the finding solutions and look to those things that we can do to improve, then we're just stuck complaining. And so that's one thing that I like about what's coming up in this series, because we are going to look at issues. We are going to look at challenges. Yes, we might sit and have a complaint fest for just a little bit, but ultimately it's to bring us to those actionable steps that we can start immediately so that we can improve, so that we can get past some of the things that we're facing when it comes to instrument coordination, when it comes to communication within our departments, and how we can ultimately improve our departments. Because when we improve that communication, when we improve that coordination, then we are working together to improve patient care. And that's really what we want, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I love it. This is going to be a fantastic series. It is 12 parts. This is episode 1. So we have 11 more to go. And we really are going to be tackling some very important topics. We're going to dig deeper each week into those challenges and struggles. But like we said, Jeff is going to leave us with actionable steps that we can take to see immediate improvement. So stay tuned, because next time we're going to be talking all about communication, visibility, and how instrument coordination is affected, for the good or the bad, by our ability to communicate. So I'm Melanie Perry. I'm speaking with our expert, Jeff Wertz, the perioperative instrument coordination expert. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the First Case Expert Series.